So we've discussed a few challenges, and I'll be honest, I had an extremely negative view on DCFS and the entire system, but luckily I had the opportunity to look at the adoptions divisions and how you guys operate, and it was just amazing to see how the social workers were just so genuine, some of them even fostering children themselves and adopting, and it was eye-opening. So can you discuss the highlights of your current career and also the parental component and trauma attached to it?
Okay, so when people ask me what's the best part of my job, I always say helping people. I don't care how I can help people, I want to help people. We're helping put families together, ideally for the kids to go home as long as the situation can stabilize and everything's safe. But if the child can't go home, we want them to have permanence through adoption or legal guardianship, and to either be with relatives or to go to a family that, really wants children. Maybe the family is infertile, or maybe they just want to add to their family. In my particular family right now, I have 4 boys and I want my girl. So we're actually in the process of adopting through the county, not LA County because I work there, but we're trying to adopt through, Riverside, San Bernardino, Orange County. And that way, not only can we have our daughter that we've always wanted, but we can help get a child out of the system. So when a child's in the system, many times they're afraid. They've been taken away from their families, as we've discussed, and they want that stability. And when a child feels loved and has a routine and has stability, maybe they've never had stability before, maybe they've never had a home before, and so you just see that child thrive. And I've placed children, and I've seen them 3 months, 6 months later, and I don't even recognize them. They look so different. They're, they have a glow about them. They just, they don't even look the same, and it's such a beautiful thing. And that's, something I personally live for. My coworkers, I know it brings them great joy when we are able to put families together, whether it's the birth family going back together or whether it's a child that's being adopted. We try to go to the finalizations at Children's Court and be there with the families as they're finalizing, and it's a happy time. But one thing that we always have to remember, as just a human, as a social worker, as a previous foster child, and now we're adopting, that adoption is also about loss. Somebody's losing something. Maybe it's the birth mother that just couldn't get clean. Maybe she just couldn't, stop drinking or whatever the addiction was. Maybe it's somebody that is mentally ill that, didn't get on the right medication regime and they just weren't able to parent. That doesn't mean they don't love their children. And so, people are quote unquote losing their children to the system, but I don't want to be somebody that judges and feels like they were bad parents or they didn't love their children. And, just looking at it from a lens of, people have issues. And when you're a foster kid, let's say a foster child, and we talked about this a little before, then has a child. If there hasn't been an intervention, if there wasn't some kind of counseling or parenting classes, you run the risk of perpetuating that abuse and those patterns because you didn't learn another way.
Well, you're definitely providing an extremely transparent lens, and I think that's extremely important for our audience to hear. And you're right, that trauma component is something that's not oftenly addressed by society and all of the different fields that are created to help other people. So it's inspiring to see that you're bridging those gaps and providing therapy to people in need to stop those barriers and to halt that generational component and to ensure that people have a good rest of their lives.
That's right.
What are ways that we as social workers can improve in ensuring there is a streamlined reunification process or even bridging those relationships that have been damaged?
Right. Okay. And that's, a loaded question, but I'd love to answer it. So, when I was working with the biological families trying to reunify, I would pick up the siblings and take them to a park and, try to have these visits. We also have case aides that do that now. But, as long as caseloads are as high as they are, and I know, DCFS is working on that, but as long as they're that high, we don't have the time and the power to do that. We need, lower caseloads so that we could give our families more attention, so we can pay attention to specifically siblings and their relationships. And if they're not placed together, how can we increase visitation? We need them in family therapy, because if it's one child that was targeted or abused, and then that child was the whistleblower, the other siblings might hate that child because now everything blew up because this child said something. Or maybe they were all being abused, but everybody knew it was a family secret and you don't tell anybody. And then someone told somebody, kind of like how I told my friend who told the school counselor, right? And then all of a sudden, you have police and social workers, court, attorneys, it's very convoluted. So I feel like siblings should have more contact. I, in a way, love social media for this, because siblings are finding each other on, Facebook and all these different ways,
True.
And, even through DNA testing now with like 23andMe and all these things, you're finding people. Kids are finding their birth parents, which, hopefully they're ready for that. I feel like every foster kid needs counseling. I'm in the field, of course I'm going to say that, but honestly, when I was a teenager and I was getting counseling, and although it was fun to talk to somebody, I was never real. I never went to the deep core issues, out of fear or out of loyalty to my family. And so a lot of times as foster kids, we sabotage, if it feels too unfamiliar or too scary, we'll ruin it, because I'm going to reject you before you reject me, right? Because
Very
we have
true.
so much pain. We have so many layers of pain. I feel like, if you slice an onion and you see layer after layer after layer.
When does it stop?
When does it stop? Well, it eventually stops, right?
Thank you for sharing the complexities surrounding individuals who are aging out of the system, individuals who are experiencing the system, around adoption, resource parents, the birth parents, sibling contact. I think a lot of people, it's easy to blame the system or to blame yourself or your parents, but really there's so much complexity and trauma attached. But at the end of the day, despite the challenges, there is hope.
There is.
So thank you so much, Allison. Once again, this is Refining Purpose TV. I'm Darla Cozzarelli.